Judgment and discernment are in contrast of each other, and there are many definitions of both. Judgment is defined as the act of judging or assessing a person or situation or event. It is also defined as the cognitive process of reaching a decision or drawing a conclusion, the mental ability to understand and discriminate between relations, the capacity to assess situations or circumstances shrewdly and to draw sound conclusion, an opinion formed by judging something. Judgment and criticism is reacting from fear, often related to the behavior of others. On the deepest level, it stems from a longing for recognition, appreciation, and/or validation. In judgment, our pain is about what others are doing, not doing, being, not being, and it has been judged, criticized as bad, wrong. It often has a lot of a story attached to it as well. Judgment has a sort of "this is the final answer" feeling, which closes us off to receptivity and the possibility of mutual understanding. Discernment is defined as the ability to make a smart judgment about something, the cognitive condition of someone who understands, the mental ability to understand and discriminate between relations, the trait of judging wisely and objectively, perception of that which is obscure. Discernment, on the other hand, is responding from love rather than reacting, so we can make an appropriate choice for ourselves and for the good of others. In discernment, we are aware that we are never completely known or claim that our perspective is the only truth. And while this is subtle and challenging to our ego, it is very important as it might change how we relate to a situation. Spiritual discernment is the ability to distinguish between truth and deception on the spiritual path. In Sanskrit, discernment is called viveka and is said to be the crowning wisdom of the spiritual path, allowing us to discover what is real versus unreal. The Indian sage Patanjali believed that it was spiritual discernment that helped us achieve a luminous state, also known as spiritual illumination or oneness. Embodiment is an excellent tool for recognizing if we're coming from judgment or discernment. Focus on what you feel. If you feel heavy, distraught, angry, you may be approaching it with judgment. However, if you feel light, or even if it's a hard situation, curious, compassionate, you're likely approaching it from discernment. And again, if you notice you're creating a large and endless narrative around the situation in which you are right and the other is wrong, you know you're in judgment. Finally, you always have a choice. So choose wisely. Join us. All right, let me get to the clicking here. Got some clicking to do. Hey everybody, welcome to Andromeda 7, your celestial gateway. Thanks for joining us. It's time to feed your mind and grow your heart. And tonight, as usual, we have an enlightening show for you, judgment versus discernment. And before we get started, please everybody feel free to like, share, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel or you're returning, welcome back and thank you. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Now let's introduce our illustrious panel. And I'm going to start with my lovely co-host and dear friend, Teresa D'Antone. We've got Sophia with us in the house tonight, and Dalibor Suki. Nick and Jasmine have returned. Good to have you guys with us this week. We missed you last week, but it was great seeing you in chat. And of course, Grandpa Brian. Everybody knows and loves Grandpa Brian. Thanks for being here. Let's go ahead and say hello to everyone in chat. Lee, it's good to see you. Wonderful that you're here tonight. Chloe, hope you're doing well. Loving your crystals. I've been checking those out. You have some amazing crystals. Cool stuff. Loretta Enigma, such a pleasure. Good to see you as well. Beloved Abstract, namaste, my friend. Good to see you as always. Let's see, Truth Seeker, how are you and how is your family, your son? I think about you often and wonder how things are going. I hope you're well. Let's see, who else do we have? I think that's it for now. People are still kind of rolling in, so that's all good. Well, you guys, we are talking about judgment versus discernment. And last week was kind of a heavy subject, but this week, this is an interesting aspect. And I'm just going to read a brief statement that I put together to kind of focus our attention on what we want to talk about tonight. When you're coming from spiritual higher mind, judgment versus discernment is a choice you make in that you have the ability to choose how you will respond to any given situation. Are you reacting out of fear or out of love? Many will test you. Is your spirit prepared and with courage and strength like a warrior? Battles are won with foresight and ingenuity. Remember who you are. Nothing can hurt you unless you allow others their pain and anger. This will subside like a storm in the night. The waters will recede and cool, and all will be restored. Don't take on blame, shame, or guilt. You only have control over your own mind. Their drama is not your responsibilities, and others will place blame, but you can choose not to get wrapped up in it. Utilize your higher mind and always choose wisely. And I think the dogs agree. Two dogs agree.
Luna, you rascal.
Yeah, you rascals. Woof, woof, right back at you. That's so cool. I love animals. They're the best. They are so cool. Well, you guys know we usually start with 3 questions, and those 3 questions often can go into an hour to 2 hours long for the answers. So let's get to the questions. And let's see. They're pretty simple. You know what? I'm going to start with you tonight, Teresa, and I'm just going to go that direction.
Okay.
So, do you utilize a default response to any situation? How do you react when you run into something that just is kind of offbeat and you're not sure what's going on? Do you have a typical way that you respond to people, or do you respond with just pure emotion?
I used to respond with just pure emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, the term default response is often referring to, and I was filled with these. I had tons of these, believe me.
Mm-hmm.
But they are a common way of responding to the same type of topic over and over and over. For example, I used to be really closed off to the concept of star seeds and alien beings and all that. And so it would trigger me every time people started
Mm-hmm.
talking about it and trying to pull me into a discussion. And I would just have a standard response: close the door on that, you know? And it was
Mm-hmm.
very judgy of me too, because I would say something judgmental or critical about what they were saying. And the same can be said for ways in which I responded to certain types of things like politics or any other thing for that matter that my family would bring up to me. I was I went into a defensive mode, or it was something that would make me uncomfortable. It didn't fit in with my belief system, so I would close those doors. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't allow them to express themselves, and I would just shut them down. And then
Mm-hmm.
I applied it to blocking people is another way of doing it. When you have social media, block people on Facebook or block people from your.
You're like,
I'm not
talk
going
to
to.
the hand, talk
Yeah, I'm
to.
not going to. Yeah, so it took me a while during my spiritual awakening to realize I
Mm-hmm.
was doing that, and a lot of that was just programming,
Uh-huh.
or cultural programming, or my own genetic uh, way, because there's genetic markers within your
Or your
family. Not
current
the whole
beliefs,
family's
right?
that way.
Yeah.
So that's the environment I was raised in, and I
Mm-hmm.
felt perfectly justified to do it too. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and but now I will say this: sometimes depending on the situation, having a standard response, if it's coming from a heart space, if it's coming from an intent to establish healthy boundaries, is not necessarily a bad thing either.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And it does depend on
success.
the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I had someone I had to block on Facebook because they were insulting other people to the extent that even children, I mean, they were insulting family members of mine
Mm-hmm.
or good friends of mine that I've known for years that are wonderful people, and they were just attacking to the point where it made them uncomfortable to follow me on Facebook, my own family or friends.
Mm-hmm.
So there are times when a standard default response such as blocking, or even just saying we're not going to discuss that. Yes, I'm going to close the door. It sets a healthy boundary.
Mm-hmm.
But having said all that, I learned how to identify once I became more spiritually aware.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I learned how to identify what those responses typically are and why, and learned how they affect my interpersonal communications with others.
Mm-hmm.
They also allowed me to work on myself, this is
Mm-hmm.
something I need to improve upon because I'm closing doorways of opportunity to learn and grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also inflicting my will on someone else who needs to express themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we're here to learn, and we're here to support one another. And so I wanted to be more supportive, and I wanted to be more accessible and not shut down the doors of opportunity and be less judgmental and more accepting and open to the possibilities that
Mm-hmm.
I may have never considered before.
Mm-hmm.
So I just mapped it all out, and now I have a completely different way of responding to certain types of problematic people, and you could
Mm-hmm.
spot them. There's certain character personality types, and you can learn to identify them and back away from the emotions about it
Mm-hmm.
and show more compassion and respect. It's about respect and and compassion and love, because you're coming, and that's what I'll do. I'll take it internally. That's why I have the owl here behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my higher self embracing the wisdom and the knowledge over the many incarnations to bring it
Mm-hmm.
into my conscious awareness so that I don't just look at the scales of judging
Mm-hmm.
a situation. I make a more informed decision that's of a higher mind. And
What do
so
you
I can
do?
make choices.
What do you do if the person does not return the show of respect?
Well, if they're
Sorry.
closed off, no, it's true. It's a new watch. If they're closed, then I have to let it go because if they're not ready and they're not accepting,
Mm-hmm.
then it's kind of like old program would say, "Cast not your pearls be to swine." Well, I don't think of people as swine, but I understand what they're saying. Is don't put your energy where it's not accepted or receptive. You do what you can, and if
Mm-hmm.
they come back at you, you just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't let it trigger me and start telling them you should be this way or you should be that way or you should think this and you should think that or you should behave this way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't put the expectations out there because I can tell when they're ready and they're not. That's where
Mm-hmm.
your discernment comes in and your intuition comes in. You have
Mm-hmm.
to feel your way through it. And if you're feeling those energies, then you back off and let them have maybe they just need to vent,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they've gone through a terrible situation and they're still coming out of it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
assume anything. And
Yeah.
this is why I love talking to you and people in our community, because a lot of you will remind me, Teresa, take it easy. Don't assume anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you might find out a week later or 2 weeks later, they come back around and say, "Hey, when we were having that conversation, I got a little heated. I'm sorry about that. Let's talk this through because I need some help." To see if you slam the door and act and give them a tood and condemn them and judge them for it, they may
Mm-hmm.
never come back. But this leaves the doorway open for communication and respect. It's about respect. So anyway.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you very much for
Mhm.
expressing that. Sophia, how about you? How do
Oh
you
boy, oh
you do you
boy.
utilize that default response to any situation?
Yeah.
um, so my automatic response to any situation is generally, what am I doing here in the first place? You know, because not all situations are created equal. Not all people in my life have the same orbit. And my time is my most valuable asset. And I'm not going to waste it. I guess that
Mhm.
makes me a snob. I mean, fine, whatever. That's where I'm at right now. That's my current situation. But
Mhm.
and ye old notepad. All right, here we go. Um, so I did my pre-party in my study. So it says,
Mhm.
the further I get down my metaphysical, very metaphysical path of my life, because I'm a psychic medium. This is not
Mhm.
something that I just set down one day. This is every day in varying
Yeah.
degrees and intensities.
Mhm.
So, coming from that perspective, I guess someone might find it helpful. I tend to give the benefit of the doubt. Like each person, each situation has its unique signature and its unique learning experience, not only for myself, other people that are witnessing the exchange, or the person themselves that initiated the conversation. So, I try to give the benefit of the doubt. If it becomes abusive, I terminate it immediately because those days are behind me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Ain't got time
so
for that.
I feel a situation through, and I pace myself because once upon a time I was a very violent, physically violent person. It's a miracle that I've never been to jail, thank the gods. And I lay a boundary until the energy signature is clear, as to what my course of action is going to be and if it's going to harm anybody. Okay.
Mhm.
So if I get up and walk away, let me walk.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Not
Mm-hmm.
complicated.
Yeah.
And then, is it healthy for me? And will any good come out of the situation?
Yeah.
So, because like I said before, my default was anger, you know,
Mhm.
and eventually it started to fail to serve me, and then you have natural law, like attracts like, you know, and I got tired of angry people. So
Mhm.
yeah, right on, Chloe. That's right. I'm
Mhm.
protecting my energy and my frequency. 100%. Love you,
Yep.
girl. And then because it's low vibrational, and not every situation is, but and then when a situation happens, like I've had a couple of them happen recently, I meditate on it. I really do, and I have to contemplate, my desire and what benefit interacting and entertaining those topics are going to have on myself. We only get so much time down here. I'm not
Mhm.
going to purposely put myself in a position of conflict and disrespect. If you don't know how to respect me,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
if you have trouble with respect, you got bigger problems, and I'm not going to be one of them.
Yeah.
You push the wrong button, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I know
Mm.
myself. Know
Mhm.
Yeah.
thyself, Oracle of
Yes.
Delphi. And
You
Yeah.
have to have
then
those
here we go.
boundaries. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah, and how and where and who I spend my time with, it's my responsibility. If I'm having an unpleasant experience, that's all me. And whether I
Mhm.
allow that to happen again, that's all me.
Mhm.
And I don't know. There's a lot of people that I enjoy spending time with them and sometimes just agreeing to disagree.
Yeah.
Is it really
Mhm.
that important of a topic, you
Mhm.
know, to
Yep.
to let it degrade to something that turns into a conflict when you know that there's sensitivity? I feel it's a responsibility to focus on what we have in common.
Mhm.
So that's what I do. My automatic default is to give the benefit of the doubt and why am I in this situation? Do I have to be here? Am I obligated? If I'm not, I'm going to a bookstore,
That's a good
get
point.
some coffee.
That's a great
See you
point.
later.
I'm
You
going
know?
to a bookstore.
Yeah,
Right now.
yeah. So
I like that.
that's what I have right
Any
now
place but
on
here.
that.
I
Yeah,
love that. I
yeah.
love that.
Life's too short, man. Way too short.
I feel
Awesome,
ya.
Sophia. That was awesome.
Yeah. How about you,
Thanks.
Good
Delabor?
point.
Do you have a
Uh,
default response to any situation you
no,
come into?
no, I don't,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very simple. Uh, if you do have a default response to any situation, that means you're approaching life from an ideological perspective, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one thing I've discovered in my life is that all ideologies are flawed and not in my interests and not in the interests of humanity per se. So, for that reason, I do not have any set response to any situation.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, play everything by ear, and if possible, go with the left brain rational mind
Mm-hmm.
before committing to any kind of response. And that's the big difference between both sides of the pond, so to speak. In the United States, people tend to be a lot more emotional and approach things from an emotional perspective. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
in Europe, people downplay the emotional aspect and go about their lives a bit more rationally, especially when they in their interactions with other people, like colleagues at work or customers, people like that. You don't see that much emotional outbursts here in Europe like you do in the United States, because people are taught to keep those under wrap, especially if they're negative emotions, right? That
Yeah.
doesn't benefit anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I
Very
kind
So,
of
true.
can I ask you a question on that then?
sure, sure.
Would you say that there's a difference between the divine feminine and divine masculine type of way of thinking about this too?
I
Mm-hmm.
would have
Because
no
what I'm
idea.
hearing is a very masculine response, and what Sophia and I were giving was kind of
Mm-hmm.
more on the feminine side, although we're balanced, and you're balanced too. I'm not suggesting there isn't balance, but
See, I would have no idea
I think
because
you're right. I think Americans are very emotional.
yeah, that's one thing. And but I would have no way of knowing, what the divine feminine aspect is, because I probably manifest very little of that. I don't know.
Well, it's typically more empathetic, more nurturing, more touchy feely.
Yeah, sure, but that doesn't.
Use both logic and our emotions to discern and
Sure,
assess a situation. Yeah, yeah,
sure, I get that. I totally get that. But that doesn't mean just because you're more logical in approaching an unknown situation. We're talking unexpected, unknown situation. It's not something that you can approach emotionally right away, because you
hmm
don't know what the ultimate result is going to be. Is it going to be positive or negative? You know, you can't make that judgment call in advance until you've actually negotiated through
yeah.
what it's all about. Like, a guy comes up to you on the street. He looks kind of scruffy. He's asking you, "Hey, are you having a good day?" Well, if you don't want to interact with them, then you probably say, "No, thank you, bye." You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's
I
interesting. Loretta Enigma made a comment
I
about
saw that. That's
being
great.
called Mrs. Spock, and it got me thinking about it. When you watch Star Trek, especially back in the day, the original
Oh
series,
yeah,
that
very
was kind of a
familiar.
new concept to be in control of your emotions. Nobody really
Yeah,
Hmm.
understood that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I find that very interesting, because Spock would definitely not have any emotions, and he would assess the situation, and he oftentimes was very quiet until he was
hmm
ready to make a comment. So
Hmm.
hmm
Hmm.
fascinating,
Hmm.
fascinating.
Yeah.
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 Hmm. How about you, Nick? Do you have a default response to any situation you come into contact with, good or bad?
Um, I usually start out with a logical response, and then if that's not working, I use an emotional response because certain people communicate in different ways. So I try to
Mm-hmm.
use all the stuff available to me. The one that I'm the worst at is emotional feminine responses because it's very indirect, and I'm not very good at that. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I'm very
You're
much
more
like Sophia,
direct.
like, you're coming to me with the problem. Okay,
Mhm.
you're trying to use my time. So what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna let you vent.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna let you come back to me next week without me reminding you, hey, you talked about this already. Get out of your paradox before I slap you. My time is precious. That's the end of it. And here,
Absolutely.
This is what I was getting at, because
love this.
Dalabor's response was more like, I don't have time for all this.
Mhm.
You know, it's just,
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
that's because
yeah.
the situation isn't clarified. Is this a recurring situation? Is this an
Mhm.
unusual? Is this an
Right, right,
anomalous
right.
situation? What is it? You know?
Mhm. There's no specific because
Mhm.
you're coming into contact to so many different situations. And do you always come at it from, like, say, a spot point of view? Do you assess the situation? Are you emotional? Are you, more direct? We all operate differently. Go ahead, Sophia.
Real quick, I would say that we have the logical mind and then we have the emotional mind. And I would say when we take both of them and give them both equal space, we have the wisdom mind. And I feel that when we're getting older and getting more experience, we generally lean one way or the other. And I would say when we're aware of it and purposely employing the wisdom mind, so having the logic but having enough emotion to be able to relate to the situation, that's what's coming forward for me anyway. Thank you for letting me
Yeah.
throw that in there.
Sure. You got it. Nick?
yeah. Anyhow, usually when I use emotional, it's strictly me controlling it at all times. I'm literally just using it to express what I'm trying to convey.
Mhm.
That's how I use emotions when I'm trying to make someone get the picture.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I don't have to. I'm here to teach. I'm
Mhm.
not here to hold your hand.
Yeah.
I am a
Enable.
fixer.
Do
Yeah,
you think
I am a fixer, and you're a grown adult. I'm not treating you
yeah,
like a 2-year-old. I will
yeah.
treat 2-year-olds like 2-year-olds.
Do you
Grow up.
find do you find that people like the direct approach?
Oh yeah. Oh, for as much as they claim they hate it, they always come back.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Mhm. I like that.
yeah, it's just my way of doing things. Some people like the criticism. Some people need to be consoled.
Mhm.
I only console when I make my discernment and
Mhm.
say, okay, this situation, it needs that. I need to show some humanity. I can't be a freaking drill sergeant about it.
Right.
There's times like that. But like I said, if I see someone constantly throwing themselves in the same paradox on the same
Mhm.
problem, not understanding
Yeah.
how to get out of it when I've consistently told them exactly how, you're starting to
You're
waste my time.
calling them out.
Yeah, you're starting to waste my time. You're starting to be an energy vampire. I'm fucking calling you out.
Right.
Like
I feel
it's as
that.
simple as that. Like I have zero
Mhm.
tolerance for it. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. Like
Mhm.
you're coming into my space,
Mhm.
wasting my energy when I'm trying to do all this crazy stuff that requires that 24/7. Get out of
Mhm.
my face or figure it out. It's
Mhm.
as simple and cut dry as that. If that's judgmental of me,
Mm. Believe me, Nick, I totally resonate with
Yes.
that.
I don't think it's judgmental at
No.
all. I think how you
No.
choose, I do think it's a choice. I do think you're making a choice, and that's setting appropriate boundaries, because that doesn't serve you to get sucked into that. So I don't
It's
think that that's
honest.
being judgmental. I think it's being true. Yes, I think it's being your truthful, authentic self. How you
Mm.
respond linguistically, though, when you say, I'll call them out, that's where I've had to learn my temperance, because I used to get quite vocal,
I used to be really bad.
and I don't do that
I've
anymore.
gotten better over
Yeah.
the years, but I'm still pretty bad. I think once
Yeah.
it's about after like the third time I start going into that energy,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm with you. I hear
because
you.
at that point I think you're not listening to me. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
you're ignoring me. You're just coming here to waste
Mhm.
my time at that point. Like
Mhm. And
time
your
is money.
time is
Time is energy.
valuable. Yep.
Like
Yep. Absolutely.
now, if you want to pay me, you can keep saying the same thing over and over again. I don't care how many times. Because that's an honest transaction. Money is the physical aspect of energy.
It's
So
that
at that point, you're
exchange
not
of
wasting.
frequency.
Yeah, at that
Yeah.
point, you're
Part
not
of it.
wasting my
Yeah.
time. So you
Mhm.
want to keep giving me $100 every time you want to talk about the same problem. Go ahead. But if you're not going to do that,
Dollar
then
amount.
Gonna start
Yeah.
charging it. Yeah.
Fees double next time.
yeah.
How about you? Go
But
ahead, Nick.
it also depends how close you are in my circle. Like Jasmine,
Yeah.
I'll let her bleed her heart out if she wants to. But
Sure.
that's because she has girlfriend privileges.
Sure.
I'm not dating everyone. She won't let me. So
Uh-oh. That's funny. What say you, Jasmine?
I feel like this kind of question talks about a lot of different topics.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer the question, like, do I have a default response? I did,
Mm-hmm.
in all honesty, had 3 main rules. Like, if you mess with any of these 3 things,
Mm-hmm.
it's an instinctual reaction for me. Like, if
Mhm.
you mess with kids in front of me, I've called people out, like,
Yes.
especially in church and stuff, where like they were beating the kid, like this
Yep.
kid in the stall, and I was just like, oh hell, I did not, like, for some reason it just, I get a surge of anger and energy, and I just can't. I've gotten a lot better of
Mhm.
stopping myself, because I realized that I have been putting myself in danger. So it's usually my 3 rules were kids, animals, and the elderly. If you mess with
Mhm.
any of those 3 things in front of me,
Yeah.
it's not pretty. You don't get nice Jasmine. You get like little
Rocky Balboa.
it's scary, because one time there was these groups of men that were beating up on a dog. Those 3 grown adults beating on
Ugh.
a dog. And I got
Mm.
so angry. I saw it and I could hear like the wails of the dog. And I was like, I got in the middle between 3 men and a dog. And they're just like, what are you doing? Well, like retrospect, they're like, that's so dangerous. You can't be doing that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, to me, if I would have died in that instance, I wouldn't have cared, because I wouldn't be able to live with myself
Yeah.
knowing that I let something like that
Allowed.
happen.
Yeah.
So I was just like, it is what it is. But those were my default responses. Like, I
Mhm.
didn't, sure, you might have been like, I don't know, maybe there was a reason for all of it, but from my perspective in that point in time, I have no tolerance for it. But I've
Mhm.
learned that, love the person, set boundaries on the actions, like set boundaries on the people, but love the person. So
Mhm.
I've been adapting that more and saying like, hey, I don't know the whole story. I only saw what I saw, which is why I
Mhm.
spoke up for what I saw. But
Mhm.
as far as anything else is concerned, it's beyond me. But
Sometimes you just react.
those
You,
are the only 3 times I react. Everything else, I'm kind of very like Delabar, like it depends on the scenario. Like it depends on how the energy is. It depends on who I'm talking to. It depends on the environment, because talking to somebody is not just all verbal. Like there's social body cues. There's settings, tonality. There's a bunch of other things that could come into play with it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So any other instance besides those 3 things, I'm pretty chill, and I try to like see it from multiple angles. So
Mhm. Go ahead, Teresa. That's a question.
Jasmine, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I had some similar situations. I actually went after these guys with a hose. And it wasn't just a hose, it was a power washer. So I ended up paying the dues with the police because of it, not them for torturing the dog, but oh well. Okay, so what you were just talking about reminded, I took this down as a note. Default behaviors are the actions you take without thinking. They're your habits, they're your routines, your programming, your compulsions internally. And there's more than 40% of our daily actions they've surveyed that are controlled by our defaults. 40%. They're powerful tools for both helping or hurting, depending on how they're used. Then I have another note. Defaults are the easiest, most unconscious patterns of thinking and behavior because they're instinctual for you. They're instinctual for all of us. We all have our defaults. They're automatic. They come out with no effort. They are artifacts of your social and genetic programming, how your brain has been wired to respond. The social programs are established by your upbringing and culture, especially genetic programs, which are evolutionary motives related most often, to sex, food, and safety. You're talking about the safety of children, the safety of animals, the safety of the elderly.
Her
So it's a
default
natural.
response.
They will say that a mother has an instinctual, natural ability to protect. And you will see women who can have an adrenaline surge to give them physical ability to respond to protect the nest or to protect. So it's not necessary. It's a default. It's one of these built-in default mechanisms that we have for protection and self-preservation and survival, but caring about other people. It's not that it's an evil thing that you're doing or a bad thing. It's actually because you care, because you love, and you want to protect and defend. And so I find that kind of default response to be
And
most,
especially those who can't defend themselves.
I think that's the
yes.
part that gets me the most is that they're defenseless. Like
Mhm.
if someone has the powers and the tools to defend themselves, like I used to defend a lot of kids that used to get teased on, and a lot of the jocks. Luckily, I had a lot of friends, so if someone tried to pick on me, they'd be like, "Oh no, she's off limits. I don't care what she said or what she does. You don't
Right.
mess with her," which is fine. But my point is, I would only defend that quiet kid or so much for like 3 or 2 times because then they would start getting dependent on me. And it's like for me, it's like those 3 things that I named, like the children, the elderly, and the animals. I see that as like you have an advantage over them, and you're basically
They're
abusing that
innocent.
power. And I think it's exactly
Mhm.
they're innocent, and it just lights a fuse in me, and I'm learning to control it better. But those are my defaults.
Interesting. Wow. How about you? Thank you, Jasmine and Nick. Thank you. Grandpa Brian, how about you? Do you utilize a default response to any situation?
Yes, I do now. Coming from a Christian background, you're basically taught to judge people, to be criticized if they don't agree with you. But now I use the response if they're trying to trigger a response from me by saying something. I just turn and walk away. I don't give them the satisfaction of giving them a response. If someone says something that I don't agree with, I don't judge what they said because I've learned everybody's on their own journey. Everybody has their own thought process. It's not for me to judge what they think. It's their journey. If they want to say something that's judgmental, that's what they're meant to do. I'm not going to listen to it. Like I said, I'll walk away if they're trying to get a response from me. The only thing I can do is send them love. And that's what I try to do. There's too much judgment in this world nowadays. And, it's not right for us to judge other people because we don't want other people judging us. So, and that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. So we got the next question, which is, how would you respond to someone who is emotionally unsettled? We'll start with you, Teresa. How would you respond to someone emotionally unsettled?
Okay. Again, I'm so glad I've grown. I'll spare you the past. Now, how I respond. The very first thing I've learned to do is my own self-check. I know that's going to sound strange, but I determine what I think my own emotional state of being is at that moment. Can I handle this right now? Do I even want to be here right now?
Right.
Do I need to be here? And if it's someone I deeply care about or somebody whom I know and I'm close to, my natural instinct too is to want to help. But I first have to know that I am in the right frame of mind to handle anything that might come out of that. Because when you're dealing with someone who's being emotional, anything can happen.
True.
And it can blow up and they can turn on you in a dime, or they can
And you can
do
say
something.
things you don't mean and you can't take back. Mm-hmm.
So, I ask myself, can I handle this situation without being judgmental? Do I have expectations on how they should act or respond to any advice or counsel that I might give or how I might react? Am I making myself available to them in hopes of changing their behaviors? Or is it my intent to help them release and see certain truths about themselves for their own personal healing and recovery? What are my motives? What are their patterns? If you know them and you've been through this before with them, what are their patterns and how have they affected me in the past? Am I ready to handle this now?
Mm-hmm.
How did I handle it previously? And am I in a state of being where I can now respond in a more compassionate and loving way without taking things so personally myself? Can I remove myself from my emotional reactions to take this on? So that's a biggie. That's the very first thing I do. And then the second thing I do is determine if they're in a state of emotional avoidance versus acceptance. And I think we talked about this earlier. And that is that a lot of people that I've dealt with who get emotional, they just want to vent. They want to dump, or they don't know what they want. They don't even know why they're being emotional. They just are. And a lot of them know that they get emotional, and it makes them feel better to get that out. So they're in an avoidance mode where they don't want to hear, they don't necessarily want help. Or if they do want help, they're avoiding talking about what's really bothering them. So I put myself in a situation of ascertaining whether or not I think they're open or closed at the moment. Sometimes it's best just to be there and listen and say nothing. And sometimes it's better to remove yourself if you don't think that you're going to add value to it. Okay. But if they're really having a breakdown and you really love them and you really want to be responsive and accepting and open, then you have to make up your mind. I chose to do this. Now I'm going to be quiet and let them do what they need to do. Now, if they are, timing is everything, right? So I wrote down choose the right time, approach with care, ask if you can talk ahead of time. That's important because sometimes you're like, I really need to talk to you. And then you find out, well, okay, I'll do this with you, but I might ask you a couple questions to help you out. Is that going to be okay? I let them know it's going to be a two-way communication. Because I don't want to take them off guard by the kinds of questions or trigger them. There has to be an agreement. So it's not that I have all these expectations, but I do make an agreement. I'll sit here and I'll process this with you and I'll help you with this, but I'm going to say some things and I'm going to ask some things. Are you going to be okay with that? And if they're like, I don't know, well, then maybe we should just wait a while, Speak honestly, openly, be direct about what you need from them in this exchange and give them a chance to respond. That's real important. Shut the hell up and let them talk. You ask them a question and it might not be what you thought it was going to be, but just be quiet and let them answer. Give them time to get it out. And the next thing I do is I focus on their feelings, not mine. Encourage them how to share how they felt, how they're feeling emotionally. Encourage them to be their true, authentic self. That's the whole point. Okay? It's not to change their behavior or to tell them how they should improve their lives. It's to allow them to express themselves because it's through that expression that you'll learn maybe things that you can do to help them. Or you'll learn more about why they are the way they are so that you can handle things with them in the future, especially if they're family or close friends. Asking them might upset them a little bit, certain things, but you have to be understanding that they're voicing some very painful feelings and emotions, but in the long run, it will help them to reduce their emotional stress. That's what I've learned, even within members of my own family. And lastly, language is everything. I have learned that it's the language that I use when I'm having a communication with people, especially if they're upset. Things like, don't worry about it, it'll pass, it's not a big deal. I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this. You're old enough to be able to have a more measured approach, don't you think? So you come across with all of these, you know exactly what I'm saying.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that's not helpful. That's like taking a tank of gasoline and throwing it on the fire. That's going to cause them to be even more isolated or reclusive, or just go off the deep end. So
Mhm.
language is everything. I took some notes. Can you tell me more about what's going on? And this is how a good friend like Lori and I, or me and my sister used to be before she passed away. She was like a best friend to me. We used to say things to each other like, "Can you tell me more about what's going on? If you want to tell me more, I'm here to listen. I've noticed you haven't been yourself here lately. Is there anything on your mind? I can see this is hard for you to open up about. Is it okay? It's okay. Take your time. I'm not in a rush. I'm here for you." And you will hear Lori and I saying this to each other when we have that exchange. And my sister and I used to do it all the time. It sounds like you're dealing with a lot at the moment. I'm really sorry to hear that you're feeling like this right now. I'm really glad you're sharing this with me. Now, you see, that's the difference. That's the difference between being emotional, reactive, and judgmental, and being open to coming from a heart space of compassion and empathy and respect. Again, offer reassurance and seeking to help, ways to help them. So I hope that answered your question. I know it was a lot, but I really had to think about that because I've been through so much of this, particularly in the past year with someone, and it's been very challenging. But I've learned how to open up and be more receptive and open and of value to them in the process. So,
How does that value for you?
it's value for me because I'm flipping. Before, if I would close off, um, I wouldn't be open to anything that they're reflecting back at me because it could be about me,
Mhm.
or it could be about something that we're experiencing together for the business or finances.
Mhm.
It could be about household maintenance. So if I'm pushing at them and I'm fisticuffing or I'm challenging, if I'm facing them as if it's either trivial, unimportant, or something that really annoys me, and I don't like it, then shutting the door and walking off into the sunset doesn't solve anything for anybody.
Mhm.
And it doesn't let me see if there's something that I'm doing that could be um, blocking both of us from experiencing something good together.
Mhm.
Or teaching me about something I need to know about myself. Why am I reacting this way? See, I don't get to do the analysis. I don't
Mhm.
get to do the self-examination if I just shut the door and shut them down emotionally. Not to mention, it's not showing much compassion. Now, if they're violently emotional, this again is another story. You have to use your discernment. And if they're going to do something that's harmful to someone else, you might need to handle things a little bit different, a little bit more firmly, especially if they're getting ready to do something harmful. You
Mhm.
might have to assert yourself a little bit more, but you have to feel your way through this.
Mhm.
But yes,
Mhm.
that's how it helps me because it helps me learn and grow too
Gotcha.
by
Gotcha.
allowing it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Teresa.
Mhm.
Sophia, same question to you. How would you respond to someone who's emotionally unsettled?
Time, place, situation. It's kind of like the default response to any situation. What is my purpose? Am I equipped to handle this? Am I in a healthy mindset? I mean, there's a lot of scenarios in order to keep it healthy, and it depends on the nature of the unsettlement,
Mhm.
and my default, if you will, as long as I'm effective, is to listen. And being psychic, I, it doesn't take much to breach the threshold. Kind of like last week, we were talking about the trauma. That was very, very, very difficult for me to sit through it, because with my gifts and my abilities, when people talk to me, not only do I hear what they're saying, I feel it. And I would say about 85% of the time, I see the situation. And
Mhm.
this, I cannot watch violent TV, so if the unsettlement involves violence, I might not be the best person to help them, but I will do what I can to help that person get into at least a safe space and get someone to help them, because not everybody is equipped to do what Teresa just spoke about. That
Mm-hmm.
takes school and training to do that effectively. I mean, it even takes training to effectively listen,
Mm-hmm.
and to know
Mhm.
what to say, like Teresa said, what to say, what not to say. And like someone said earlier, it sounds like sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not everybody's cut out for that.
Yeah.
And
True. That's
let's
true.
see.
True.
But yeah, it doesn't take much to breach my threshold of what
Mm-hmm.
is healthy for me to help someone else. It's kind of like when a plane's crashing, you got to put the mask on before you help someone else with the other mask on. And depending on what's
Absolutely.
going on,
Yes. Good point.
there's
Yeah.
responsibility. And then responding to someone who's emotionally unsettled, um, maintaining my vibration and frequency of love. If I can't effectively be objective and effectively listen if I myself am having an unsettled day,
Yeah.
Just
and
like
vibrating
yes,
at the
That's a good
frequency,
point. Mm-hmm.
that's the
vibrating at the
number one
frequency of
thing.
love
Yep.
helps. Yeah, staying in that mindset as much as possible gives me constitution to serve. So it's like before I do my readings and other things, there's a pretty healthy pre-party that goes in front of that. So I
Mm.
can be at my highest and best to be that person.
Mhm.
Because most people, I'm kind of like an urgent care doctor sometimes. People just don't show up for the fun of it. I mean, some do, but I
Mm-hmm.
have to be ready
Yeah.
for whatever situation. Because and then what's saying right here, if it's a violent thing, like if there's a lot of blood or things, I'm not wired to navigate that in a healthy fashion. I can't even watch violent TV.
Mm-hmm.
Ask
Mm-hmm.
my
Yeah.
husband. I can't. It's not
Know
healthy.
thyself.
But
I
I'll
Know
get
understand
somebody to
thyself.
help
that.
them.
Yep.
Yeah.
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 And here's the other thing when it comes to me being able to respond to someone who's emotionally unsettled. I have always, even from a very small child, I will assimilate the energy around me easily. And I know that about myself. So I have to be very mindful of where I'm at, what I'm doing, and what I'm asking myself to do at all times. I
Mhm.
have to be
Mhm.
very, very careful.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, my gift can be a burden if it's not respected and honored
Mhm.
on purpose. But generally, spirit will either bring someone else into the picture,
Yep.
to help. I'm not just going to leave somebody in a situation. That's not cool. But I
Mm-hmm.
know what I can and can't do. And I'm blessed to have the ability to be able to discern when it's time for me to bring, to reach
Yeah.
out.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
that's
Well
what I have
said.
on
Not
that.
everybody understands that. Not
Yeah.
everybody understands that. They inject themselves into some
It's
knowing
not
what your
about me.
limitations are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing what
Hmm.
your limitations are, knowing what you're capable and not capable of is paramount to any kind of success between in
Hmm.
any kind of exchange in that situation. And using your discernment, you might need to get
Right.
help. You don't have to do it alone,
Right.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right. If they need someone to hit a home run, they might need to put someone else up to bat.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Pinch hitter. Dalibor, how about
Exactly.
you? Thanks, Sophia.
Well, yeah. How do
Yes,
you
ma'am.
respond to someone who's emotionally unsettled? Well, that depends on who that person is, right? Is it a
Mm-hmm.
stranger? Is it somebody who you know?
Mm-hmm.
Generally, most of these emotionally unsettled or unsettling people would be strangers, right? And in which case
Not necessarily.
well, in my case, that
Mm-hmm.
would be the case.
Okay.
Uh, because and in which case you want to get as far away from them as you possibly can. You know, I smoke, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if I were to go to downtown Prague smoking a cigarette, I wouldn't make it from one. I wouldn't make it 2 blocks without my whole pack getting ripped off, basically by forced charity, right? Where
Mm.
people come up to you and say, "Hey, can I have a cigarette?" So your default response has to be no. And you have to
Mm-hmm.
make that a forceful no, because otherwise you're not going to survive. Because if one guy sees that you gave him a cigarette, okay, that you have to give another guy a cigarette. And it's not about the cigarettes again. It's about the fact that you have to stand in line for 5 minutes in a supermarket to buy your next pack, right?
Mm.
So it's also a time issue. How do I deal with somebody who's a friend of mine who's emotionally unsettled? Similar deal. I can't really help them. And I don't know if they're expecting a sponsorship from me, or for me to sponsor their emotional unsettledness, or do they want me to do what I do best? You know, take the problem and just throw it in the garbage, and or ask them questions like, okay, can you put it off? Can you put it off for a day? Can you put it off for 5 days? Can you put it off forever?
Mm. Mm.
Things like that. So uh, your best weapon is distance. It's kind of like with the police. The police can't arrest you unless they can see you, right? If they can't see you, they're not going
Mm-hmm.
to arrest you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same with deranged people on the street. So that's why I generally don't go out at night, and I don't go to bars, because that's where emotionally unsettled people tend to accumulate.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Bars and nighttime,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of situations. You know the deal.
Yeah, placing yourself in those situations, you
Placing
want to
yourself
eliminate the possibility of having to deal with something like that,
Yeah,
or
being
who
exactly, yeah,
knows what
because
incarcerated.
pops up. You're just not going to put yourself into that space.
yeah, and I don't want to put myself into that space. It's not because of a lack of fortitude or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. I can't hold my own in a fist fight. And but on the other hand, I'm legally licensed to conceal carry. So if push comes to shove, I'm just going to shoot the person dead if I feel my life to be threatened.
Sorry.
So, and I don't want that outcome.
Yeah.
So I prefer to avoid those situations whenever possible. So
Look, I'm going to pop you here in a minute.
yeah, yeah.
You keep doing what you're doing,
Well,
you're
I
going to
wasn't
get it.
expecting that response tonight, but
Well,
I can see it,
I
brother.
think
I
it's
can
great because, I mean, you
that's
draw the
the
line.
reality. Yeah, that's the
That's your
reality.
reality. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's reality. I mean, I don't live in a storybook reality like people in the
Mm-hmm.
United States do. No.
We don't
Not
really
all of us
either, but
do.
Yeah.
no.
Well, obviously, there's different levels of emotional
Yeah.
breakdowns and
Yes.
emotional problems, and
Mhm.
Yes.
so of course, depending on the situation, you have to either determine if you're in a defensive mode, like I said
Mm-hmm.
earlier, or if you're in a
Yeah.
accepting mode, and
Mm-hmm.
In
yeah,
which
you're
case,
gonna,
it's best
yeah,
to just put distance between yourself and any
yeah,
emotionally
Mm-hmm.
unstable
Remove
people.
yourself from the situation.
Yeah.
run, Forrest, run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No doubt about it.
use your judgment, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
got a comment on that previous comment where the lady was commenting on somebody wearing a T-shirt that said "No judgment, just Jesus."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I couldn't. Uh, that elicited a laugh response in me, because uh, it, Jesus is supposed to judge you after you die, right? So no judgment, but judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what that shirt is saying.
Mm-hmm. Judgment versus judgment.
Yeah, judgment versus judgment.
Wow. Thanks, Dalibor. Nick, how about you? How would you respond to someone who's emotionally unstable
But
or unsettled?
usually when someone's emotionally unstable, they're just gonna throw you right into the conversation, regardless of what you want to do.
Yeah.
Luckily for them, I like fixing problems. So what I do is I let them do their word vomit, whatever it is, until they pause. And then once they pause, I
Word
remind them a philosopher's quote. I think his name's Seneca. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but he says the greatest remedy to stuff like anger is to take a pause. So I tell them to breathe. I tell them to lower the volume. Like let's figure this out. And usually calms them down. Usually, if it doesn't, then I just keep letting them word vomit until I can say what I need to say. So once I have a general idea of what's going on, and I asked them a couple times, I'm like, is this all the information? Because I swear there's it's all the time. They never want to really say the whole picture. I'm just like, I can't get into the meat and potatoes of fixing it if you don't give me the critical information. Or you don't stop leaving clues and variables out, or this is going to go nowhere fast. Which is hard for people to do sometimes, though, because it's a trust thing.
Yeah.
Very vulnerable state. But and I also don't have a lot of patience for caterpillars. I'm a very I'm supposed to help butterflies type of person, because I'm not to toot my own horn, but I am pretty advanced when it comes to the stuff like this. I have a lot of emotional intelligence. So once we start talking it out and stuff like that, I start listing them solutions and stuff like that, and then at that point, it starts becoming a free will game. Are you going to take the medicine? I'm a hard pill to swallow. Medicine is very bitter, but it's still medicine. So you can either not be a baby, take the medicine, or you can continue your paradox of suffering. That's what it boils down to. And then depending on their choices, depends on how close I am to them at that point. If they keep making the wrong choices, I'm going to disengage from them very gradually and slowly. Even family. No one's safe. I take my space very seriously. I understand proximity effect very well. To the point where I've been manipulating
not playing.
Yeah, I'm not playing. I want to succeed. You're either going to succeed with me or you're going to get out of my way.
Yeah, there you go.
You're either going to realize that I'm the captain or you can get off the ship.
That's super healthy. Super healthy.
Yeah, I like that. I like it a lot, actually. I resonate with that. Definitely. Jasmine, how about you? Same question. How would you respond to someone who's emotionally unsettled?
See, for someone like me that's like relearning emotions and not putting them in a box, I am exposed to a lot of people being emotionally unstable or unsettled. I do not know why, but it's like it'll be like a group and we're pulling some tarot cards or whatever, and then someone starts to like uncontrollably cry, and I'm just like, what in the world is going on? I didn't even like going to funerals. Like when my friends would die, and like they'd be like, "Come to the funeral," and I'm like, I want to be your friend, but do I have to?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just because like I didn't know at the time about like what Sophia was saying. It's like that empathy that like I feel everyone around me, and I can feel like that they want something from me, that they want that they're looking for something, and they think that I can give it to them, and I'm just like, hold on, I don't even know what I'm going through. Like so I'm usually what I do, since I am very skeptical about emotions, is I take a step back and I like see it in a third person perspective, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on around me right now? Because I don't know how to act. I don't know how to behave. So I stop and I look, and I'm just like, okay, well, this girl's crying. The exit's there. There's an exit there, just in case if I have to use them.
Yeah. There's an out for you.
Exactly. So I sit and observe real quick, and I pay attention to the verbiage. Like if all they're if they're just crying, right, and their body is just going through emotions and they're quivering and they're shaking and stuff like that, then I know that's my cue of like, oh, they need reassurance. They need like, like a hug, or they need, a touch, or they need something to know that they're not alone, right? But
Mhm.
if I hear verbiage of like saying like, oh, why is life like this to me? Everything always goes wrong, blah 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 blah, like very pity party, self-loathing kind of talk.
Mhm.
Like I'm just like, are you then I ask, then I actually ask, I'm like, "Are you venting or are you looking for a solution?" Because those are 2 different modes, right? And then once they're like, "Oh, no, I'm just venting," and I'm like, "Alright, cool." So then that tells me that I don't have to pay attention 100%. I can just be like, "Oh, wow. Oh, really? Tell me more. Oh, wow. I did not see it. Mhm." And I just, do the active listening, and then at the
Mhm.
end of it, I'll just poke a question like, "Well, what do you think you could have done differently?" And then they'll be like, "What? We weren't talking
Mhm.
about me, we're talking about them." And I'm like, "Okay, you're still not ready for, like, part 2 of
Yeah.
the session."
Where's the
So
self-responsibility? How
exactly,
did
this
you create the situation? How are
the
you
accountability.
responsible for your actions? Yeah.
So, like, I used to have a friend, and, she was very suicidal. She tried to commit suicide, like, 4 different times.
Mhm.
And she would I would always be the first call, and I would have to stay up till, like, God's ends of, like, the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then still having to go to work the next day. And then she would not like, I understand that venting and problem solving both are necessary. Like, we have
Mhm.
to get those emotions out of our body, if not, they're gonna keep coming up.
Yeah.
So, usually what I learned from watching, psychologists and from, like, trying it myself because I have ADHD, so I get a notepad, right? And I write everything down, like, as they're talking, like, questions that I have, so not to interrupt that process. Because me, myself, I understand how hard it could be sometimes to identify what you're feeling, you know what I mean? Or
Mhm.
why you're feeling that. Like, you tend to for me anyways, I tend to overanalyze what I'm feeling, and I'm just like, "Is that really what I'm feeling? Is this what I'm feeling? I don't even know." And so, like, when Nick talks, like, "So how does that blah, blah," and I'm just like I pause, and he thinks that it's time for him to talk, and I'm like, "No, I don't even know what I'm saying." Like,
Yeah.
so
Give me a moment to
it
figure this out.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm just like, "Is this anger? Is this frustration?" I think this is one of those combo emotions, and, like, so
Mhm.
anyways, I
You're like, what label fits the situation?
if they
How
can't
am I
even
feeling? I don't know.
exactly, so I'm just like, "Okay, well, So once I let them vent, and then once they vent, and then I'm like, "Okay, are you ready for, like, looking back at it? Like, now we got everything out, everything's out of your body, everything's ready to be, like, yes, like an emotional vampire." Once they get like that, like my friend that was suicidal, and it becomes, like, draining
Mhm.
almost because what
Yeah.
they're doing is that they're siphoning my energy, I started calling the
Mhm.
cops. I'm sorry, I was just like, "I can't like, you've attempted suicide 4 times. I have to take you seriously, and I do not have the skill set to talk you off the ledge every
That's
single
right.
time.
Mm.
That's right.
Not
That's
Excellent.
right.
so
Yep.
I called the cops, and I had to call the cops twice, and then she eventually stopped calling me, and I'm just
There you
like,
go.
"It is what it is." But, on that topic of emotional vampires, I a good tip that I had was if they're hungry for energy, you channel the light and you feed it to them because they're hungry for energy. And
Mm.
that quickly will tell you if they're in venting energy siphoning mode or an actual problem solving mode. Because the light will actually calm them down and will actually start making them think and see things rationally. And then if they leave, they're not looking for a solution.
Mhm. Yep.
Do you find that when they're in a, let's take a look at the situation. Let's say you're out in public, you know, or you're somewhere that's not home. You could be at a relative's house, or so I think getting them out of the situation is a good thing too if there's other people involved. If you can get them away from the cause of the disruption and not isolate them, but get them out of the environment to where they're able to just, even if you take them to get a cup of coffee or their favorite drink, or No matter, something that disarms them, puts them in a disarming, gets them out of that space and away from that energy. It's sometimes a good thing to do, I have found, because then they can relax and they can slowly allow that energy to normalize
Mhm.
and just breathe, let them do their breathing. They might not even be spiritually aware, but everybody's got to breathe.
Yep.
And it's all about the breathing to calm down the nerves, you know?
It's that vagus nerve.
Hmm.
They're basically in active fight or flight, so they have all that adrenaline pumping through their veins. And there's a really like a proverb that says you can't see clearly into boiling water, and that's how you
Hmm.
see the world when you're angry. You're like a pot of
Yeah.
boiling water, so you got to like simmer it down, which is
Hmm.
hard sometimes. You know what I mean? So get a drink. Maybe so the senses are a very good grounding way to get back
Hmm.
to reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Jasmine.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Grandpa Brian, how about you? Same question.
Uh, well, if they come to me with anger, uh, I usually say, I'm a step away for 5 minutes. Come back to me when you have calmed down and we can discuss this rationally. If it's some of the other emotions, I love what a friend of mine uses, Matt. There's two S's. Do you want sympathy or do you want a solution? So if they want sympathy, I will just sit there and let them just get whatever they need to get off of their chest. But if they're
Hmm.
wanting a solution, I never give them the solution, because if you give them the solution, guess what? They're going to keep coming back to you. What you do is you start asking them questions and you
To
let
lead
them
them.
figure it out. Lead
Yeah.
them, exactly. Lead them to figure out the solution on their own. So that way they don't have to come to you every time they're in emotional stress to deal with it. They can work through it by asking themselves questions. Okay, what is causing this? So that's how I kind of approach people now. Like I
Hmm.
said, anger. All right, give me a 5 minute break. Come back to me, and then we can have a discussion once you calm down a little bit. But the other emotions like sadness or whatever it is, if you're wanting sympathy, I'll let you get it off your chest and say, all right, you feel better. But if you're wanting a solution, I will not give you the solution. I will not give you the answer.
I love that.
I
I love
I
that.
will help you figure that out
Hmm.
on your own.
Hmm.
That way, you start training them to, instead of depending
Hmm.
on people, they start going within and figuring out why am I emotional like this? What's causing
Hmm.
this? So basically, you're helping them help themselves.
They learn from your leading questions because
Correct.
now if you're not around, let's say you're on vacation or you're gone,
Yeah.
now they can sit there now. What was that? How did he? I love that because you're teaching them at the same time you're being a sounding board for them or offering them a shoulder to cry on. But
Mm-hmm.
you're
Exactly.
opening doorways for them to understand how to communicate. And here's something I've done. I used to do this with my mother along similar lines, but my mother was highly emotional. She was a severe diabetic. And so she would go off the deep end sometimes. And I would remove her from the situation or ask others to leave. Mom can't handle this right now. You got to go. Come back later when things are calm, but you need to leave now. Mom needs quiet. And then I would take her through a similar process. And but again, it comes down to the language, and she was expressing some things that almost were hatred in the way she was using the language. And so you can actually, while they're doing that, say, do you mean to say, now, Mom, do you really mean to say you wish you said you wish he would have a stroke and die? Or do you mean to say, I'm so angry with him right now that if he had a stroke and died, I wouldn't care?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you're teaching them intent, to examine their intent behind something. And once you can show them what their intent is, then they can start self-correcting their response. to these
Exactly.
emotional situations. And eventually, over time, you'll teach them how to temper their own emotions through the language.
Exactly.
Anyway, it worked for her. Got her to
Yep.
calm down.
And,
Yeah.
and it works with everybody. If you just walk them through and let them figure it out on themselves, because
Mhm.
you don't know what's going on inside them, but they do. So if you let them figure it out on their own,
Mhm.
they're more able to accept it because they figured it out on their own than me saying, well, you need to do this or you need to do that. They figured out, okay, I need to do this now, or I need to do this,
Yeah.
that now. So they're doing it on their own. And that's the best way to go about it, I think.
Now,
Mhm.
GP, if they've done that for a while and you've been through this with them for a few times, at what point do you finally, if they're not getting it and it's not working, at what point do you take yourself out of the situation, take yourself out of it?
I would tell them there's nothing more I can do for you.
Okay.
You most likely you may need to go get professional help, but there's nothing more that I can do for you. I can only show you how to
Yeah.
maybe not process the emotion, but how to navigate through the emotion.
Yeah.
Which leads into the next question. And what I'd like to do, Grandpa Brian, is have you start us off on this last question. Do you allow others their own voice and opinion?
Oh, most definitely, because like I
Mhm.
said, everybody's on their own journey. Everybody's going to have their own opinion. Like at our group, I mean, there's times where I didn't agree with what another person was saying, but I allowed them to say it and I respected what they
Mhm.
said. Even though I didn't agree with it, I
Mhm.
still respected it. And there's been a couple of times where, I mean, it didn't get where it was a shouting match, but voices were raised a little bit. But at the end of the night, we were still friends, still brothers, still brother, sister, whatever. And you
Mhm.
still love the person. You respected what they said. And I learned everybody's going to have their own opinion about no matter what it is.
Sure.
And it's never, you have your own opinion, you have your own beliefs,
Yep.
just like everybody else. Everybody else
Mhm.
is on their own journey, like you're on your own journey.
Mhm.
It's not us to decide or judge what other people say, what they do.
Right.
You have to respect this is their path that they're going down. I'm going down this path.
Mhm.
Like Sophia said, we do have common ground, so we can meet on that common ground. But other than that, you can stay on your path, I'll stay on my path, and when it comes time, we can meet together on the common ground.
Mhm. Wow. Cool. Thanks. How about you, Jasmine? We'll work our way back that way. Do you allow others their own voice and opinions?
Yes, because I've learned that opinions can be right or wrong. It's just an opinion. It's not a fact.
Mhm.
So, it's an opinion. So to me, it's like um, I have a very live and let live policy. So like you can do what you want on your side of the world. I'll do what I want on my side of the world. Like,
Mhm.
I'm the master of my own house. You be the
Yep.
master of your own house. Like
Mhm.
it's your life. That's the reason why you have God given free will. Like, but in the same tone, that doesn't like that means that I sort of expect the same kind of respect. So that's why I start like distancing myself with people who don't respect my boundaries and they just
Mhm.
be like, "Oh, well, I told you blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "I'm not a dog. Like don't treat me
Yeah.
like one." Like so but yeah, definitely have to have your own opinions. There's definitely like different walks of life or like different modalities or different um like point of views. Like I think it's fascinating to see all the different points of views, and I think that there is like common truth and common knowledge beneath it all. It's just
Mhm.
once you start having like absolutes, I think that's when it's like I feel like when people accept absolutes, they start closing themselves off and they start getting
Yeah.
more closed-minded.
Mhm.
So that's the only time where I'm just like, you can have your own opinion, just not with me.
Yeah. Mhm. Right. I love that. How about you, Nick? Do you allow others their own voice and opinions?
Yes, I do allow them. For as adamant as I am about how I feel about my time and stuff, I still let them have a voice
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not the center of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
They're going through stuff just like anyone else,
Sure.
and they got to feel it. It's the
Mm-hmm.
only way that they can grow. There's a limit, There's a limit to where are you growing or are you just making yourself suffer?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You don't deny anybody their suffering.
no, it's a choice at the end of the day because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very big advocate of freedom, and everyone always acts like they don't know what they're supposed to do out here, and it's just like it's ironic to me because we asked for free will, and what does that come with? You figuring out yourself on what you want to do.
Lots of free will.
Yeah. Silly humans ask for free will, doesn't even know what to do with it. I just find it's one of the biggest ironic things I've come across through my searching and studying. I just can't help but laugh at it because it's really that simple. We overcomplicate a lot of stuff for no reason.
Absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm. Spirit often tells me, keep it simple. Always keep it simple because it really is simple.
Yeah. Yeah, if they can find some rationality in their irrational moment, I'll listen, and maybe they'll say something at an angle that I didn't even see, and I'll end up agreeing with them. It happens all the time. Because at the end of the day, I want to see people get better. I don't want them to get stuck. It hurts. It's like watching a freaking dog limping on the side of the road and then get hit by a car. Like, that's depressing. Like, I don't want, like, I don't get super adamant because I'm being a jerk. I'm doing it because it's my way of healing and showing that I have unconditional love. That's how I communicate it.
Loretta Enigma says, suffering, what you're willing to put up with, that you have the ability to change. I looked that up a few weeks ago. Cool, Loretta. Very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. And a lot of people, because they're so traumatized, when the good times come, they can't even feel it. You can't do that to yourself. You're supposed to have both in life. The law of correspondence says so. The amount of pain that you're supposed to feel the same amount of joy. And if you're robbing yourself of that, I'm gonna feel bad about it. I'm gonna do my best to drill it in your head to get it. If you come to me with it.
Yeah.
Jasmine says to do it lovingly and gently. I do it lovingly, but I'm not very gentle.
Well, you do have a lot of masculine energy. That's who you are.
And that's the best way to make irrationality stop is to slap it in the face, make it get some sense. Best way.
Sometimes a good whoop.
Tells me.
Sometimes a good whoop ass is the best form of therapy there is.
Yeah, can of whoop ass. That's all you need, Nick.
But see,
something tells me you and Jasmine sort of balance each other out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, she's the feminine emotional side. She's the water. You're the fire. Yeah.
But I have learned an interesting technique because I like alchemy a lot. So I've figured a bunch of stuff out. Like, well, if I can turn it into this, I can turn it into that, and then you can do the same thing with irrationality and rationality because the law of polarity, they're polar opposites. You can find the rationality in irrational behavior. You just gotta know how to look at it in one angle. Like a good example is why is that Jehovah's Witness defending a pedophile? Like why are they buying top-notch lawyers for that? Very irrational on paper, but once you start digging into it, maybe they got blackmail on them. Maybe they're business partners and there's a lot of money at stake. You gotta look behind the curtain of irrationality to find the rationality. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that.
Right.
They're not. And that's why they're always in turmoil and chaos. And I really have a disdain towards society. I really disagree with it, where they always try to do toxic positivity about it. They're always like, no, you gotta focus. Look at the rainbows. Look at the puppies. Look at the sunshine. That's what you should focus on at all times. No, you're it's no different than being on freaking uppers, like those type of drugs. Like you are robbing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The only way that you can fix things is if you get deep down in the muck,
Mm-hmm.
pull it out from the roots, then let it grow, and then you get to the light.
Mm-hmm.
This entire planet is a school. I don't know if everyone hasn't realized that or not, but if you haven't, it is a school. You are here to learn and to help. No matter way you want to look at it, you are being used to an extent, not because you're a slave, but because you agreed upon it before you got here.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
Yes, you're right.
You need to
On
pull the
that.
straps up
Mm-hmm.
and do your end of the bargain, because everyone on the other side is doing theirs too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Take it like a human being,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what you are.
Yep.
Yep.
I feel like a lot of people need to learn accountability and responsibility.
Absolutely. Self-responsibility. Yeah. And self-love. Those are two things that's a must.
Oh, especially self-love. There's so
Mhm.
many people that don't know how to process that, to the point where people who do have it, they look narcissistic.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Wow.
Yeah. So it's a learning curve for sure, because there let's face it, there's a lot of dark stuff on the world, but there's a lot of good stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You got to
there
accept
is.
both. And once you do accept both, that'll actually put you in your own power, and you'll be at a different tier than everyone else.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. No doubt about it. Thanks, Nick. Delabor, how about you? Do you allow
Well-
others their own voice and opinions?
Well, theoretically, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, because of course I believe in freedom, so I give other people the freedom to have their own voice and whatever opinions they want to. But
Mm-hmm.
in a practical sense, I would say no. I'll give them their own voice and opinions only if they accept my voice and my opinions.
Right on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if you have a
Respect.
situation, yeah, that's respect. And if you have a situation like that, I'll ask them, like, okay, so why do you believe what you believe? What are the facts behind that opinion? How do you justify that viewpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a good example of that would be during the 2016 elections. I knew somebody who was going to vote for Hillary, and he said, but she's done so much for women's rights. And I was like, okay, well, like what? Name one thing that she's done for the cause of women's rights. He couldn't name a single thing, right? So I felt kind of vindicated by that. But of course, that's an ego thing, and that's not necessarily a constructive way to approach these things. The better approach is to offer counter arguments and counter opinions using facts and reasoning to back it up. And everybody has certain facts and reasoning to back up any opinion that they have. It depends on which facts you focus on, because using Google, you can come up with a list of facts to justify any position, and it all depends basically on personal experience. Like, okay, in my personal life, this has paid off. In my personal life, this has not paid off. Right? So, yeah.
Interesting.
Love that book, Jasmine. Love it.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
It's my
So-
favorite book.
Yeah. It was what I must have 6 copies of it still in my closet. I just hand them out like candy.
It's because, okay, not only is it good for ADHD brains because it has like pictures and like quotes and comments and stuff like that, but it actually has baby steps to like where you can actually apply. Like everyone's like, how do you start building rapport with yourself? How do you start building respect for yourself? How do you start building trust with yourself? And it taught me a lot about how the subconscious mind is constantly hearing you. And if you're like, hey, I'm going to go do the dishes, like I'm going to do the dishes today, right? And if you don't do it, your subconscious takes note of that. Like, oh shit, she said she was going to do the dishes and she never did. I can't trust her. but it's and he puts it in as like a self piggy bank of where you start keeping a banking system with yourself. You're treating yourself as your own friend and keeping
Uh-huh.
it's wonderful. I love it.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great book.
Well, Sophia, coming to you on this, do you allow others their own voice and opinions?
I do, but with the things in place as far as respect. I mean, people have fought and died for our rights to speak and speak freely.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying, where you're saying it, who you're saying it to, what platform you're on, what's your agenda, what's your intention, that all is a factor. So, do I allow others their voice? Absolutely, especially in this country. Freedom,
Mm-hmm.
people, freedom. And
Mm-hmm.
Ye Old Notepad says it also depends on what they're saying. And are they talking with me or are they talking at me? Because there's a big
Mm-hmm.
difference.
Yes.
Also, every situation can vary wildly. You know, can I relate? Can I support? And short conversations are okay. You
Mm-hmm.
know, just because somebody wants to talk about something doesn't mean that it has to be exhaustive. And is it spoken in love? I mean, if there's the frequency of love involved in that conversation, you're going to hold my attention. You know, there's been something that was brought to my attention that it's okay to immediately disengage and excuse yourself. And I feel that certain things would stay healthier if that was employed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Also, you know, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's all right. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay. And how boring this world would be if we all got along about everything. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
most
True that.
people, yeah, most people are challenged to speak peaceably. You know, generally, some people they only speak when they come to a point where they can't stay quiet anymore, and that's not really healthy. But and then you know, everybody has different points of view. And like somebody said earlier, you know, we can glean information from listening to each other, and everybody has a genuine opinion for one of two reasons. Either someone that they care about or respect or was raised by held that opinion, so they're in a rinse repeat, or they've experienced something to where that opinion somewhat has become a coping mechanism to them to navigate to a healthier space. I mean, everybody
Mm-hmm.
has their opinions for a reason, and if that person's important to me, you know, I'll give space. But if they're just blabbing at me, you know, that there's no respect and there's no love. And for me, you know, like Nick said, it can become a waste of my time. And
Mm-hmm.
that's my most valuable resource, and I spend it wisely, or at least I try to. Um, and that, you know, I've been there, you know, when I've had something to say and the people that I'm around, you know, didn't find value in what I had to say. And I didn't like how that felt. So I try not to do
Mm-hmm.
that to other people. And then it falls
Exactly.
back
Yeah.
into love and respect. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're not loved and respected, are those your people?
Mm. Good. Good point. Probably not.
Most
Yeah.
people remove themselves with their behavior
Mm-hmm. They sure
Hmm.
do. Yes, they do.
quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to mention something because I feel like a lot of people like struggle with this, but
Mm-hmm.
with what Sophia said, they'll be like, "But it's family. It's
Big deal.
family."
Genetically
Yeah,
similar
yeah,
stranger. Drive through.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If they're putting you down and treating you like a garbage can, that's not your family. They might be
Mm-mm.
your blood, but that's not your family. Find your family.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
Genetically
love that.
similar
Sometimes it comes down to making a
strangers.
decision. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
We all got them.
You good, Sophia?
Yep, baby. I still got some more, but it's on the other topic.
Okay, sounds good.
If we get to it, we get to it. If we don't, we don't. And I got the
Oh, we-
Havamal out with some good
Oh,
shit.
we will. Trust me, we will. We're at this last question. Teresa, you're the last to answer, and then we will do that tarot draw on this judgment versus discernment. I really like doing that.
Woo-hoo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. So do you allow
I'm
others?
so glad.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm so glad you're asking this question because I think it's extremely important. Because the human mind, the human
Mhm.
brain, it can be an innumerable amount of different types of emotions and mental states of being that any one person, let alone everyone, can possibly be in at the same time. So at every given point in time, there's something going on emotionally within inside of a person that's not always observable to us. We don't always understand it. So allowing someone, and there used to be a saying, I want to own my voice. I'm going to own my voice. I'm going to step up to the plate and I'm going to get my point across. It's real important in business, to own your own voice. But we have to remember, and this is how I'm trying to look at this. I'll just see things a little differently, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I like everything that everybody said, and I don't disagree with anything anybody said. I think it depends on you and how you want to handle this. But I'm trying to remember myself, and I have to remind myself we came here to experience individuality. We came from a collective. We still reside in that astral plane of energy in that collective, but we individualized for a reason. And we incarnated here to have individual experiences. And so if I close the door on another person, on another spirit, on another soul, then am I not in violation, if you will, of what we agreed to do when we created this school? So why would I keep someone from expressing how they truly feel about anything, to express any opinion? And I'm fine with that because people need to be heard, they need to be seen, and they need to be authentic. And so if I'm shutting them down, I'm not allowing them to be their authentic self. And that's important to me because I've been shut out before too. So I know how this feels.
Mm-hmm. A lot
So
like
I
what
don't want to
Sophia
make
said.
anybody else feel that way.
Yep.
The second thing that's important here, I think, is I'm going to talk about sound and frequency for just a second without getting too detailed. But language, verbalization, expression has a vibration to it. And it's in that vibration that I have learned more about who I am by expressing myself and my opinions to someone who I know is going to let me do that. So I will find a receptive person. I'll say, hey, I want to bounce some things off of you because I've been thinking about this and this is how I'm feeling. But I'm not sure where it's coming from. But I'm going to express it. And I'm not trying to be opinionated and I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I really need to get this out. So that's another reason for letting someone express themselves, is so that they can be in that frequency that they need to be to do some emotional healing, perhaps. Or for me to be receptive to their energy, to be more appreciative and understanding of a perspective that I didn't consider. We are reflections of one another, are we not?
Mm-hmm.
So by not allowing them to give you the information, then you don't see the reflection back, so that you can see something that you might get out of it that's very fruitful in the conversation. You might learn something new or a different perspective, and it might be part of your journey to hear what they have to say, even though you're not liking it. And again, it comes down to respect. And I have been down this road. People in this community have seen me do it in chat rooms where I've walked out of a chat room or I've said, hey, you know what? You're attacking somebody. Let's keep it cool, people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be cool about this because I will shut you down if I see you expressing your opinions in such a way that you're rip tearing at somebody else in the process. There's that reciprocity that you all were talking about. It has to be an equal exchange. But if you're attacking someone, we had a guest that was attacked by someone in a chat room, a guest on a program.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, don't insult our guests. You have an opinion, you have a platform, go express it on your own platform. You have that kind of an opinion where you think, it's when you start getting judgmental, critical, criticizing, condemning, and complaining. What are those signs of? That's a sign of someone who doesn't know how to communicate how they feel without doing it through criticizing, condemning, and complaining. And when I see that going on, it's not acceptable to me. Now, if that sounds like judgment, okay, very well. But it's not acceptable, and I'm not going to promote it, and I'm not going to do anything that makes you think it's okay.
Right.
So I will set those boundaries, and I will set those limits, and I will either block your comment, hide your comment, or put you in timeout.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a responsibility to treat people a certain way within our community and on our program and things like that. But there's times when family members do it to each other too.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been down that road before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really sticky. I've had family member who wouldn't talk to me for a couple of years because of some decisions that I had to make in that regard because their opinions were unfounded. And they were using slander as a means to get their point across. And they were causing great harm and distress in other people and bringing out those emotions in other people. So having said that, I don't want to, because I'm going to allow time for Sophia. But so those are the key points. And I'm so glad you had this show tonight, Lori. I'm so glad you brought these questions up because it's something that we all struggle with off and on. And very grateful for you bringing up the topic. Really heard some things tonight that kind of got me thinking.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. And thanks for all the support and love and your guidance as well. So and the guidance and love of everyone on the panel and all who participate. Very thankful for everyone. So it's nice to have a space where we can come here and actually discuss these things in an open forum where we're not judging each other, and that we're actually able to discuss how we feel about that. To me, that's really important because there's just not enough of that going around, I think. But more and more so. So I'm glad to be a part of that. So thank you so much for that. So tonight, guys, Sophia's going to pull a few tarot cards on this subject from for judgment versus discernment. And I'm really looking forward to this. So I think we'll incorporate this into the show because I think it's a nice addition. So what you got there, Sophia?
So I don't really draw. I just shuffle until something falls out. Because when it comes to serving in this regard, my biggest job is to get out of the way.
Yep, exactly.
So I shuffled, and I'm looking at the title on the show on my screen, and I'm just focusing on judgment. and this is top nudity, but I think we're all adults here. But temperance came out. And I'm like, the usual conversation. I'm like, okay, temperance for judgment. And pretty much came through, when you feel yourself being judgmental, when we mature to the point where we catch ourselves doing it, because a lot of people do it. They don't realize that's what they're doing. To be patient with ourselves, because it is a process. And be patient with others that haven't quite yet arrived. So when it comes to judgment, and this is a major arcana, so this gives it importance. There's other cards that could be used to convey this meaning, but it's basically stand in your truth. Is it something worth spending time and energy on? Do you have to focus on that? And as far as judgment goes, sometimes the best answers come within because her eyes are closed. So she's feeling the situation
Yeah.
and going
Yeah.
within before she
Getting
participates
counsel from the
in
self.
that.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Okay, so similar thing, and did the discernment, was focusing and staring at that word on my screen, and lo and behold, another major arcana comes out, and this time we have the Empress card. This is my cosmic deck. This is actually the
Okay.
first tarot card that I started reading with 6 years ago. But the Empress knows her worth. She knows her worth. She knows herself, and she is not going to settle. So, excuse me. When it comes to discernment, just being mindful, and knowing your worth, and should you bring that forward, and taking each situation and looking past the face value, what normally people would be like, boom, there's my judgment, I'm moving on. The Empress, she's very wise. She didn't get the creature comforts that she has by being frivolent, and just whatever with her emotions. She
Big
knows what
picture.
she wants, and she has the
Yeah.
ability to get it.
Yep.
So
I like that because that's so appropriate, because lack of temperance is intemperance, right? And intemperance cuts down on your judgment and your discernment.
Yeah.
So that
Yep.
fits perfectly.
Because you have no self-restraint.
Yes.
You're not acting in moderation. You're just letting it all out. And it's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
becomes explosive.
And
Wow.
I have, if you guys don't mind, I have a couple verses from the Havamal that
Sure.
have been laid on my heart. The
Okay.
Havamal is out of the Poetic Edda, and Havamal means one of two things: either sayings of the High One, which would be Odin, or sayings of the One-Eyed, depending on the person's interpretation. But it starts out with Havamal 53. Where the beaches are small, it's a small sea that washes them, and so it is with little minds. Not everyone is equally wise, but the average is moderately wise. You should be only a little wise, never too wise. The happiest people throughout their lives are those that know just enough. You should be only a little wise, never too wise. A wise man's heart is seldom glad if he is truly wise. You should be only a little wise, never too wise. It is best not to know your fate beforehand. You'll live happier if you don't. A torch is lit by another and burned till it's burned out. A fire is kindled by another fire. A man becomes wise by speaking with other men, but foolish by keeping to himself. That
Wow.
was
Profound.
Havamal
Wow.
53
Great.
to 57.
Wonderful.
So,
Wow.
yeah,
Nice.
Awesome.
yeah, that's that.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sophia.
That
Oh, th-
I just
That's
felt
awesome.
compelled.
I love
Thank you
that.
for
I'm
giving
glad
me
you
the space.
shared. Yeah, always. I'm glad you shared because we always get a
Yeah.
lot out of it. Love that. Well, guys, we're getting to the end of the show here, and we're just going to do quick final thoughts. I'll start with Dalibor, and we'll make our way around, and then we'll call it a night. Dalibor, final thoughts.
I'd say judgment is best reserved for actual judges. When it comes down to the
Funny.
nitty gritty.
Boom! I like it.
And discernment, everybody
Mhm.
needs discernment. Everybody needs to be able to discern what's ultimately in your your best interest, what's in the best interest of humanity itself, right?
Mhm.
And how those two align. And you also you do want to have a measure of temperance in your life, definitely. And temperance, that gives you discernment, because a lot of people are intemperate in that they're either under the influence of some kind of an ideology or a chemical, right? And that includes like pharmaceuticals, that includes vitamins, that includes a lot of different things. So you want to divest yourself as much as you can of prejudices, right? Or prejudging a situation before you use discernment to determine what's the best course of action for you.
Well,
That's it.
temperance is balance.
Yeah,
That's what
it's
it's all
balance.
about. It's
Yeah.
That's
balance.
right.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Dalibor. Love
Mhm.
that. Nick, final thoughts.
See, my final thoughts. So I always feel like discernment and judgment are pretty similar. It's hard for me to wrap my head around them being opposites, mostly
Hmm.
because to
They're not.
portray discernment, you have to judge. So it's like, I guess it's just the connotations and perspective and the intentions behind it that differentiates what judgment and discernment is. So with that being said, with anything you do it out of love and positivity.
I totally
So that way
agree.
you can actually be the discerning type and not the judgmental type.
Temperance. Jasmine. Thank you, Nick.
I like the thought that everyone is a god in their own right, because we all create and we all destroy. So what I like to take out of all this is show everyone that same respect, but also have that respect for yourself. So have that respect for others, show them love, empathy, but you also need those boundaries, because too much of anything is bad. Such as we're talking about temperance, we still have to practice that balance. There is a thing of being too available. That's how you become a doormat. There is a thing of being too closed off and closed minded. So, temperance to me is kind of like finding that wisdom, finding what works for you, finding what your guides help you to disambiguate. And disambiguate is a word that I like what it means to me is to unmuddy the waters, to clear the waters, to figure out what is truth and what's manipulation. Because there's a lot of people out there that can play the game, and they'll play the social ladder, and they know how to manipulate, and and to me that's a lot of homework, that's a lot of things, and I trust me, I've done a lot of homework of where I've studied um, body language, I've studied word choice, I studied so much so that way I can try to be ahead of it. And now I'm realizing that it's like sometimes these people are too good. And I am the type of person where I want to give people the benefit of the doubt even when they don't deserve it. And it's like, now I know why there's witches in the forest that live by themselves and only have cats. Like, I get it. But being an extrovert, I have to try to find my temperance. I got to find my wisdom. I got to find my footing that my guides help me find, to find that soul family, to find the other people that want to learn and grow and be part of this school and not just be here, have purpose.
Yes. Well said, Jasmine. Well said. Thank you so much, you two. Really appreciate you. Grandpa Brian, final thoughts for you?
Judgment. Don't judge other people, because that judgment will eventually come back around to you and you will be judged. Think about things with a clear mind, but when you think about that, think about it with no prejudice.
I like that. Very nice. Thank you, Grandpa Brian, for sharing that and for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Sophia, final thoughts.
a lot of good things have been said. I like what Nick has to say. If it's your job to be a judge, that you know the law to do it properly, at least a better
Yeah.
attempt than Joe Q Public, then right on. That's what you're paid to do. But being judging each other just provokes limitations in a world that can celebrate limitations. And I'm down here to evolve and expand, and I do that on the frequency of love. And I feel that love and judgment really don't share the same space, at least not the way I function. And discernment, I really feel that discernment comes from wisdom. Like in the beginning, you spoke of Vivki or Vivka. That is a wisdom holder. That is someone who possesses the gift, ability, and responsibility of holding wisdom. And I feel that's why I was drawn to these verses in the Havamal, because discernment, I feel, is best unfold, at least in my life, when I employ wisdom and patience and meditation, because the answers will come. We just need to be quiet enough to hear them.
There you go.
Totally agree.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sophia, and thank you for being here. Teresa, final thoughts?
Yeah, thank everyone for your contributions tonight. It's been fantastic.
Yes, it has.
Okay, so I see discernment as a component of judgment. Discernment and wisdom. And when we're looking at it through a set of spiritual lenses, there's a difference between being able to judge something well, and it comes down to the choices that we make or the people that we interact with, to recognize moral and practical consequences of our decisions. That's discernment. Judgment, you're just left. Do I go right? Do I go to the purple path, or do I go to the blue path? Do I take the red pill, or do I take the blue pill? It's either, and we need those judgments in society because we're regulated in certain ways, and we have laws, and we have to respond to the structure that we created in this physical reality. That's where judgments come into play through the legal system and financial systems and institutions. And no, they're not based on love. They're based on logic, because we're not babbling fools. We're not automatons, and we didn't incarnate into this world as a bunch of bumpkins that don't know anything. We came in as very intelligent, thoughtful, divinely created spiritual beings in a physical body. So judgment is a gift that we have to help us regulate ourselves and navigate the world. The love comes from the discernment because it's the heart-centered spiritual aspect or component of that judgment. And that's, I think, why Lori was compelled so much to do this show tonight about this, is because she understands that seeing things through a spiritual set of lenses just a little bit gets you into thinking and knowing things a little bit better. So the next time you want to go to judge someone, hopefully we've said something here tonight that will allow you to understand that if you're concerned about someone in your family, a partner maybe, or even a close friend thinking badly of you because you're becoming someone you really wish to be, and you're becoming a better person, and they see that in you and they want to change you, it's because they don't know how to respond to it. They don't understand, why are you so cool right now when everything's crashing around me? And they're having this emotional response, and they're criticizing you for being the way you are because you're able to keep it balanced, because you're able to see it from a spiritual perspective, because you're able to use discernment and intuition to work through that situation. So at first, they're going to be really resistant to anything that you're doing in that environment that might cause them to have to self-reflect, because you're reflecting or projecting back to them something they need to understand about the situation themselves. So that's why discernment is so critical, and understanding its value from a spiritual perspective, because you can be that beacon of light for other people. They will learn through your actions and reactions. So don't be so quick to run away and close the door or shut them down or shut them up. Let them vent. Let them get it out. Let them do what they have to do. And then be very calm about it. And if you have to take a break and you have to go into another room or you have to create a space for yourself, do that. Come back around when they've calmed down a little bit. And you might be the very thing they need as a catalyst for seeing things from a more spiritual perspective. You never know. It's all about seed planting. But that's not your function. Your function isn't to change them. But why not be that beacon of light in their environment that helps them find a new way to process and a new way to think by being their example? When you're their example, isn't that what you're here for? Not only for your own individual self-development, but to be that beacon of light for others as well, so that we can shift the whole frequency.
Edification.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
anyway, just keep that in mind and have a blessed weekend, everyone. Enjoy yourselves, and thanks for stopping by and listening. And thank you,
Yep.
panelists, for all of your
You bet.
contributions.
I would
And the
just like to.
chatters.
I would just like to say that judgment or discernment, it really is about a choice. You're always making a choice about one or the other. And the other thing that I thought was really cool was this: judgment always ends in misunderstanding, and far too often conflict and pain.
Mm-hmm.
So something to remember. But yeah, great show, everybody. Thank you so much for attending and being here. Thank you, everyone in chat. We will see you next week. And until then, have a wonderful weekend, and love and peace to everyone. Take care, y'all.
Later.